So let me say a word. You know, with math and science, you really want to keep up, right? So make sure you keep up. Do this homework because then the harder ones are going to be harder. 2 cosine squared plus cosine equals 1. So what do you got to do? You want to solve this. So now they're going to make the equations themselves more complex. You got to do some work first on the equations themselves. That's what makes these harder. So okay, so here we go. So 2 cosine squared of x plus cosine equals 1. What should we do to solve this? Well, if you have x squared or cosine squared or anything like that with an equal sign, do you remember how you're supposed to solve it from your algebra days? First step is to get a 0. Step 2 is to factor, like with parentheses. And step 3 is each part equals 0. Remember those steps? That's how you solve anything to the second power equation. So that's because I'm seeing that cosine to the second power. As soon as I see that cosine to the second power, anytime if you're moving into pre-calc next semester, or yeah, for sure, if you're doing that, anytime you see x to the second power, you need to know immediately get a 0. That's the first step. So I'm going to jump this 1 over to the other side, and when I do, I get minus 1 equals. You remember when things jump to the other side, they change their sign? I really just subtracted 1 from both sides, if you prefer to think of it that way. Same thing. Just jump the 1 over or subtract 1 from both sides, whatever. So get a 0. That's step 1. Get a 0. Step 2, factor. What I mean is like parentheses. Factoring. Remember factoring? So it's easy to be rusty. I remember teaching my daughter's pre-calc year and a half ago, something like that, and them saying they hate factoring. I hate factoring, Dad. I hate it. So it takes practice. You can get good at it, but enough practice, you can do it. All right, so how do we factor this kind of thing? So remember, it's like this times this has to multiply to be that. Remember, it's basically FOIL. You're basically kind of thinking FOIL backwards. There's all kind of techniques. People have different ways. Whatever you like is great. In the end, make sure it works. Just make sure it FOILs out to work. So, do you have any thoughts? What has to be here and here in the fronts, right? Because there's a front and a back for each parenthesis. Yeah, one of them has to be 2 cosine and the other just regular cosine. Everybody see that? Because 2 cosine times regular cosine will be 2 cosine squared, won't it? Good so far? That's just what it has to be to multiply correctly. Okay, and now this and this, the back 2 spots, have to multiply to be the back one. So what times what can make the negative 1 back there? Yeah, plus 1 minus 1, like that, huh? But maybe the other order. Because the order matters. How do you know? FOIL it out. Just FOIL it out and see. The more you FOIL, after you've done like 100 of them, you'll start being able to just kind of see it in your mind. But anyway, I'll just FOIL it out real quick to see if it's right. What would that be? 2 cosine times cosine. I'm just going to use the C. There'd be 2 cosine squared to save time. 2 cosine times negative 1 would be negative 2 cosine. And then this guy will go to both, right? Remember how FOIL works? First to both, second to both. Right? So now this guy will be plus cosine, right? 1 times cosine, minus 1. Did you track with that? Is that right then? 2 cosine. What do these guys make? Minus 2 cosine plus cosine? Minus cosine. Is that right? No, I have plus cosine. Switch the signs. This will be plus, this will be minus. Try it again to be sure. If you FOIL it out again, this time you'll get plus on this guy, minus on this guy. And that's plus cosine, and that's right. So we factored that. We FOIL checked it. Now that's step 2. Step 3, you set each of those equal to 0. Oh, we're at time, aren't we? All right, so you'd have to set this one, 0. You're going to have 2 separate of the equations we just did in part 1. That's how much harder it gets. So let me say this word one more time. You show up on Monday having not finished the easier homework, you might as well start turning in your resignation for the class. True, just true, guys. Make your choices wisely. If you don't keep up, if you show up on Monday having not finished this homework, you will be lost on Monday and your boat will begin to sink. I'm not trying to be discouraging. I'm saying this is what it takes. You got to keep up because we build and build and build. If you don't know the easy stuff, you will not be able to do the hard stuff. Have a good weekend, guys. Ajane.